Tell me, who is Charlie?
Charlie is the most joyful little boy. He is nonverbal, so he doesn't speak using words, but he really is extremely engaging with people. He loves people. So he really looks you in the eye. Like when he looks you in the eye, he is looking into your soul. And so we went to the neurologist. We told her what we were seeing. And right before that, the night before, Charlie had an episode. And I remember going to my mom and I go, Mom, was that a seizure? Because I had never seen a seizure like in my whole life. The doctor was like, you have to go to the hospital right away. They were like, this does sound like infantile spasms.
Lisa, thanks for coming on today.
Hi, Adam.
Today, the hope is really just that anyone going through what you've gone through can get just a little nugget, right? Just a little nugget to make life a little easier. And by telling the story of your son and what he's battling, hopefully anyone else out there going through the same thing, they can just get a little something. So I'd like to start off simply by just tell me, who is Charlie?
Now or how?
Now.
Now.
Who is Charlie?
Charlie is the most joyful little boy. He is nonverbal, so he doesn't speak using words, but he really is extremely engaging with people. He loves people. So he really looks you in the eye. Like when he looks you in the eye, he is looking into your soul. And people say that, doctors say that, everyone who meets him, they really say like he really is like looking into you. So he makes a lot of eye contact. He loves hugs. I want to say, I can't even remember when he started reaching for hugs, but that was like a huge deal for him developmentally. And so I think it was around like 2 that he started doing that. And since then, like that, if you come close enough to him, he will be reaching out to hug you and then pull your hair. But he loves hugs. He's very joyful. He just wants to be around people. Very easygoing. You kind of have to push him a little bit. He's one of those that you have to push. I think he reminds me a lot of my brother. He's very easygoing, like that personality trait, like that easygoing, chill, calm, happy. So that's Charlie.
Well, that is impressive, knowing what he's going through.
Yes, exactly. I know.
Give me at least right now, and we'll hit the beginning here in a second. But right now, what does a typical day look like for that happy-go-lucky boy?
Yeah. Well, around 8:40 he does sleep in. Seizure meds make you tired, so he does, I think, sleep a little bit more than a typical 4.5-year-old. So he sleeps in and wakes up around like 8:30, either with me or we have nurses that help us, so they come in the mornings or in the afternoons sometimes. And then he does PT or OT at our house. We used to be driving all over to do therapies, and we just found people to come to our house, which is a huge deal. So they're amazing. So they come and he does therapy for about an hour before he gets on the bus. And then the bus will take him to school. And the bus drivers have just that was a big step for us to allow him to go on the bus. And they'll take him to school. And then he goes to school for 4 hours at school. And his teachers are just the best. This is all new for this year. So they've been just amazing. And then the bus takes him home, and then the nurse is there, or I'm there to meet him. And then he hangs out. So then he has a little bit of time and then hangs out with us. And in that day, most of the time, there's at least, at this point in his life, about 1 to 5 seizures in that time frame. So that kind of blots that very pretty picture, kind of jumps in there often. And some of those are short, like 15 seconds, and some of those are up to 2 minutes-ish. And then if it's any higher, then we're looking at hospital situation. So
when was the first time you noticed that something could be different about Charlie?
So at 5 months, He was only reaching more with one hand. And he was, like I said, he has that really easygoing personality. And that's just like, even if he was a neurotypical kid, I think he would just have that easygoing personality. But my older son, who's 6 now, when he was a baby, he crawled at 5 months. So he was like the opposite, mover, go, go, go. And so I think I was just more aware because I had him first. And so at 5 months, Charlie was only reaching more with his left hand and not his right. And also just not as engaged with tummy time or rolling or anything. So I told the doctor, and so we did start him in PT. And at that point, they were like, okay, I think it's just PT. Like, he's a little behind. We'll start this and he should catch up. And so we did PT for about 2 to 3 months. And what they kept seeing was he would have a little improvement and then the next time he wouldn't. And then improvement, kind of regression, and kind of back and forth. So they did recommend going to the neurologist. And so that was at about 7.5 months. So we called the neurologist and get all the paperwork in, and that was a whole process. And I start seeing this little, do you want this? Am I going into the full story?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, here's
Yeah.
the full story. Okay. So I start seeing him do this like clenching with his fists and his teeth. And I literally thought he was like, his teeth were hurting, like his teeth were coming in.
Sure.
And it was just very, very minor at around that time. I didn't even tell Ty, my husband, because it was so minor, I didn't even think anything of it. So then we actually went to visit friends and we went to Disney and we came back. And it was the day before the neurologist appointment. And that was a whole fiasco because they lost our paperwork. And so they didn't get us in when they should have gotten us in. And so that was where I learned. That was the first moment of all this journey that I learned I have to fight for doctor's visits. Like, there's no waiting for them to call you. If you want a doctor's visit, you call them 100 times and you get your son on that list. Because if you don't do that, they're not coming after you. You have to do it yourself. So I learned it right then. First, like right from the beginning. And so we went to the neurologist. We told her what we were seeing. And right before that, the night before, Charlie had an episode of what I had been describing, but it was longer. And I remember my mom was there and we were all like, my parents, I forget if my in-laws were there too, but I remember going to my mom and I go, Mom, was that a seizure? Because I had never seen a seizure like in my whole life. I remember our dog had a seizure one time. That was my only experience with seizures. And she goes, no. And then we went to the neurologist that next day and with Ty, and I explained to her kind of what I saw. And Ty was like, wait, what? What are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't even think anything of it. And then the doctor was like, you have to go to the hospital right away. So we went right away to the hospital because she was worried that this was called infantile spasms, this very rare and very serious type of seizure.
And this was at what age?
So he was about 8 months.
Okay.
This was in May. So we go to the hospital. This is all in Charlotte, and this is where we lived before. We go to the hospital, and we're there, and I was there, and I think Ty went to go check on or went to get dinner. I forget where he was. But I was there, so they did an EEG. So do you know what an EEG is?
No, go ahead. I mean, just in case anyone.
Yeah, so they put electrodes all over your brain, and they put it looks like a little hat on top, and that shows where how your brain is firing to see if your brain is firing the right way. This is really the only way to see what your brain is doing. So they put the EEG on, and then a little bit afterwards, Charlie had that same episode where he's clenching his fists and his teeth down, and it was a little while. And then I remember holding him during that, and then the doctor came in a little bit after, and she goes, "That was a seizure." And she brought me out because he was sleeping, and I was like, and I kind of knew it. I knew it in my heart when it happened. I was like, "Oh, this is what this is like." Okay. And then when she told me, I just was like, can I have a hug? I remember asking her for a hug. And so needless to say, that was the first on record seizure. And so at that point, the doctors in North Carolina did not think it was infantile spasms because he didn't have what's called hypsarrhythmia, which is the way that this like essential background noise that happens in the background of these specific types of seizures. So they were thinking it was focal seizures. They put him on a medicine called Keppra, which is like the first line of medicine. At this point, they were like, he could grow out of it. We were very new, didn't know anything. So went to the neurologist. So anyways, we stayed in the hospital for 2 to 3 days, and then we went home on this medicine. And we were still seeing these, now that we know, called spasms, these infantile spasms, thinking they were just seizures. And so we were like, this is not okay. Like, we're seeing way too many. They're lasting way too long. They told us essentially 5 minutes. If it goes over 5 minutes, and everyone was lasting like exactly 5 minutes, and then it would stop. But if it goes over 5 minutes, right, that's when they want you to give rescue meds. And that's when there's an emergency, because that's when it can start lasting longer. And then if it lasts after 5 minutes, the belief is that the seizure will last long enough that eventually could hurt your brain, like could actually damage. I think it's up to 20 minutes though. Anyways, but so we were just like not happy with that answer, because we met with the neurologist again, and we were like, we really don't feel that this is working. It was about a month later, in June, at the end of June. And at that point, my mom had reached out to Dr. Petros, who works for CHOA, to see if we could get in a second opinion. So, she was able to help us get a neurology opinion, because CHOA is very hard to get into. So we went, that was the second week of July that year. So this was 2021. And we went to CHOA and met with the doctors there.
CHOA, just to be clear,
Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. So went there, and because we were not happy with the answers. So we went there, we told them what was going on, and then they immediately sent us to the hospital, because they were like, this does sound like infantile spasms.
And infantile spasms, is that something from someone who doesn't understand where what that looks like? Is that a diagnosis that could be something that's just going to happen and then it goes away? Or is that the early stage diagnosis of epilepsy? What is infantile spasms?
It's pretty much like the worst diagnosis you can get, seizure wise. One of the worst, because it is so rare, and it really is important to catch it right away. So the fact that they as I'm about to tell you, essentially North Carolina misdiagnosed was a decent deal. And it's just a very rare, and it really can harm your brain if you don't get it under control as quick as possible. So, So we went to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. They sent us immediately to the hospital, and then they put him on the EEG again, the same thing. And he had a spasm, an episode. And so Dr. Holt came. So that is our doctor now, and he is an infantile spasmist. So he is like a specialist in the country, like very specialized in exactly infantile spasms. He happened to be the doctor on call in the hospital when we were there, which God thing, because that was amazing, because he was able to say, hey, even though there isn't this specific hypsarrhythmia, this is infantile spasms based on the way that it looked. And that was huge. So that, because of him, we started on this medication called ACTH, which is a steroid that you inject with like this needle like this long into their leg. And this medication is like $100,000 per vial or something absolutely insane. So I remember being like, what? And then the people called us and they said we were going to get it paid for, and it was crazy. So I remember being in the bathroom of the hospital and them calling me and being like, we're going to take care of this and you'll get this vial. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you.
Was that an organization, or was that
just I don't remember if it's just like the insurance is paying for this because.
Oh, okay.
But I remember them calling and being very clear, like, this is all taken care of. And then, so that's where we started ACTH, and we were in the hospital for about a week at that point to get it all settled because you had to like get used to doing the ACTH. Like I said, that was that big needle. So you had to, I had to learn how to do it. Ty
Wow.
and I had to learn how to like do the needle because then we had to bring it home and do it for him
How
at
often did
home.
you have to do it in home?
It was like, it started at, I feel like it was 3 times a day and then for a few days and then went to 2 times a day for a few days. And then it slowly
But
like
that's
weaned off
often
of
to
it.
have to,
Yes.
for a child that young,
Yeah, I
to
know.
have to administer that.
And he was a trooper. He, like I said, he was very easygoing. So like Charlie now gets an IV, like no big deal, like most of the time, all these things. And then, so we did that. That had this great, really amazing improvement. We were still on the lines, so now that you have infantile spasms in the picture, you are looking, okay, is there a genetic mutation? Right. So this was now when we started this journey of, okay, there's like a few things here that are looking wrong or looking different. So there's like, typically when you have 3 things together, that's when they're like, okay, let's look farther into this genetic
What
mutation.
3 things? What are the factors that could add up to the 3 things?
Yeah. So for him, there was the delay, like that developmental delay with the 5 months. And then we had the seizures. And then he actually had an undescended testicle that was not, that they found like right at birth, which is not a big deal. But all together, they were like, okay, now there's like 3 things. This looks, is there something more? So that's when the genetic testing started. And then, so we went home and after we got the ACTH and we were doing that and he was doing very well. And then we ended up back in the hospital in the beginning of August. And that's when we got the phone call about the genetic mutation. So we were hoping, right? The doctors were hoping that, okay, he just has infantile spasms. He's going to, maybe we'll grow out of it. If you have a genetic mutation, now you're looking at a lot more that could be involved. So even though it gave you a why, it gave you also maybe now a whole story.
Yeah.
So Charlie's genetic mutation is in the GABRA2 gene. It's a type of GABA receptor in his brain that's affected. So GABRA2 is the gene. He is the only person in the entire world that we know of with this exact variant. So I don't know if you remember like what I teach, which is 7th grade science. They, they're ATCG.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the nitrogen bases, right? Do you remember that from 7th grade? Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yes, I know, right? So because of my level of science, when they told me this, I'm like, oh, okay, like I understand, even though it was because those nitrogen bases code for specific proteins. So Charlie has one nitrogen base that is mutated, and I'm pretty sure I always mix up if it's an A instead of a T or a T instead of an A. And that's it.
Wow.
That is the mutation.
One little change.
One little change. Yeah, it's crazy, but it coded for a different protein. So because of that, that's why all of this was happening. So they're like, oh yeah. And then I remember meeting with the geneticist and she's like, oh yeah, he could be like, they have like no studies on it. There's like 2 articles. And she's like, he could be intermediate cognitive or, so at that point I was still on this very high hope. So I was like, okay, maybe he'll walk so he was 1 and he wasn't walking, right? He wasn't crawling. I forget. He loves to sit up. So like, I forget even when he started sitting up, but they said speech was probably going to be the hardest. So we started there. And then within the next 6 months was just, I think we were in the hospital every month. So every month we were in the hospital at one point. So after the ACTH was done, that worked well, but then the spasms started again. So we were back to where do we do now? So they put us on the ketogenic diet. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the ketogenic
for anyone else out there, let's share. Yeah.
So the ketogenic diet is to help seizures. So right, it puts your brain in a state of ketosis, and so and the doctors literally like, we actually don't know why this works, but it works. Yeah, like what? So
what do you have to eat? What sort of diet does that look like?
So for him at this point, he was still doing purees. He so I would have to weigh out every single meal, and he would have certain amount of meals, and I would have to like take a scale and weigh peanut butter and strawberries or whatever the meal was. They had like all these meals made up. And then try and get him to eat it. So like I had to spoon feed at this point because he's still not able to pick things up by himself. So at that point, that's what we started doing. And with the keto diet, though, you have to be very careful because you can have constipation and you can have all these now GI issues, which is what we had. So we were in the hospital, like I said, those multiple times because mostly of GI issues, and specifically the constipation. So then we added on the GI doctor. We keep adding on little different specialties. And I remember, so we tried, there was a point where he was crying, which I just told you, he's so easygoing, crying for like 24 hours straight, not even kidding. And we were like, we don't know what to do. So we did go to that. We went to the hospital and we tried the hospital in Charlotte, and it just wasn't as good of an experience for us because in Atlanta at CHOA, they all knew him. We had started to build now a rapport. They knew who Charlie was.
Sure.
So we had that experience and we figured out, so then we started on medicines to help with the GI, to help that. And then we were back in the hospital again for seizures. And when we were there, we ended up just driving to CHOA. So we were like, we're just going to have to drive. So we're about 4 hours from CHOA. And when we were there, it was in December. It's like the 4th time or 5th time within, 6 months. And we asked our neurologist and our GI doctor, and we just were straight up, do you think we need to move to Georgia? And at this point we had said, we are not moving to Georgia. We are living in North Carolina, my husband's job is in the Carolinas. Like that's his territory. But his boss had said if we needed to, he could move here. Like amazing boss, move here. And then he could still have the same territory. And so the GI doctor was very straight with us. And he said, I think if you can move here, you need to move here. Like you have the support of your families. You have the doctors here. And he said the divorce rate for parents of kids with special needs or disabilities is like 90% or something ridiculous. It's very, very, very high. And so that's what he told us. He was like, so I really think if you can, you really need to move here. And he really changed our lives. Because if he wouldn't have told us straight up, we probably wouldn't have felt like we needed to move at that point. So when he said that, we did. So
anyone that's in that situation right now that may not live in the Carolinas and have family in Atlanta.
Yeah, I know. Just random.
What would you say to them to do to fight that? I mean, 90% is high.
It's very high. And I think I'm right. I think I'm right on that statistic. I might be off by a little bit.
Even if it's close.
Even if it's over 50. I mean, that's just high.
Right. So if
somebody
is just now experiencing this, maybe they're just starting to get these, similar kind of layers of diagnoses. What would you recommend relationship-wise to start to? Is there anything they can do that's practical to save the relationship, to start just kind of living the new normal?
Hug a lot. No, I think we did. That's kind of later in our story, but we did do some therapy and things like that when we moved to Georgia. Just kind of in a what's the right word? Like, oh my gosh, I can't remember the word. But just trying to keep to preemptively, wanting to keep that strong. I do think therapy is amazing. I think every single person can use therapy. We all have things that everyone has different struggles, right? I always say everyone has different hards. My heart is very hard and everyone can see it, but someone else might have a heart that's also very hard that people just can't see it, right? So I think we all can benefit from that. So I think therapy is huge. I know my husband is big on trying to get the insurance to pay for families with special needs, children with special needs, that they could pay for therapy. I think that would be huge, is if insurance can start doing some things for parents and siblings to help them, cope through what they're dealing with and what they're watching, especially for siblings. That's a whole different story. Siblings of kids with disabilities is a whole group in of themselves. But I think that is really helpful in just keeping that line of communication and not shutting each other out. Because, sometimes you can go into your grief and then you're pushing that person away. And I know for us, one thing that I learned is I'm like the ultimate optimist. That's just my personality. I'm grateful for that. But I can sometimes, to the point of not kind of allowing myself to feel that, like to feel like I have to be strong for everyone else because they're sad. So I better not be sad so I can be strong. And I remember our therapist telling me, Lisa, sometimes you need to show Ty that you are also sad and you're in that place with him. So then he knows he's not alone, right? And that you're in that together. And that was really good for me because I felt like, no, I can't do that because I don't want to get stuck there.
Somebody has to be the rock.
Right. And my husband's so wonderful. But like, for both of us, it's like sometimes we do need to share that together because that allows us to grow together by both seeing that we're both here together and it is hard and it is sad, it's that grieving what you thought you had, grieving that future. There's a really cool poem, Amsterdam, something. It's like you're in Amsterdam instead of Italy, and someone wrote it about having a child with disability or special needs. And it's like essentially you were trying to go to Italy, and you ended up in Amsterdam. And Amsterdam's still awesome. Believe me, I've been there. It's awesome. But you were expecting Italy. So how can you be grateful and change your viewpoint to be in Amsterdam, right? Not that it's not great too in different ways.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool poem. Yeah. If anyone.
So getting back to the kind of timeline of the story. He's from at least what I'm gathering, he's somewhere around a year and a half.
At that point, yes. So he's born in August. So we're about a year and a half, and we moved. So then we put the house up on the market. This was all God. I have to add this little part to the story.
Absolutely.
So we list the house in February, and this was when the market was crazy. Okay. So the market was crazy. I mean, you were buying, it was just crazy. So my mom's a realtor and I'm a realtor too. I was in North Carolina. And so, we list. So I actually went on the moms group, on the Facebook moms group. My sister-in-law was like, Lisa, why don't you do this? And so it was a great idea. And so I posted on Facebook moms group, and I kind of just shared a tiny bit of our story that we were moving back to Georgia for CHOA. Is there anyone's house off market they were willing to sell? And actually a few people responded to me. So we went to this house off market, so we didn't have to deal with that. And it was an amazing location, right where we were kind of looking. And we were like, okay, like we need to do this. The price was wonderful, really good. Everything just kind of falling into place. And so then we go to list our house, and we listed our house with my broker. And so they had an open house, and there were over 100 people there and multiple offers. And then the person who came to her, like one of the last people, he came to her and gave her an offer. And then she told him our story, and he gave us 20,000 more just in the offer, just because of hearing our story, which was, crazy. And our house went so much over asking. It was crazy. We couldn't have even dreamed of what that was. And this whole time, we were sad. We didn't want to leave Charlotte. We loved where we lived. We loved everything. And God just kept these little blessings in there. Like, these little things, little love notes of like, okay, this is the right thing. This is the right thing. So we ended up moving in March, and we were at the same time we were moving, we were also going to Minnesota for another opinion. I forget. Did we go to Boston first or Minnesota? I think we went to Boston first. So we went to Boston back in the fall. I missed that part because Boston Children's is #1 in the world for neurology. So we were like, okay, who can we get another opinion from? #1. So I reached out to them, and they actually this was another reason we went back to CHOA to move, is because they said, we would do the same thing as them. So we've seen over 5 different doctors, and every single one all over the country, they've all kept being like, we would do the same thing as Choa. We would do the same thing as Choa. So it just kept leading us back that this is where we're supposed to be.
Sure.
For the best care.
And where in this entire time frame does the word and the diagnosis of epilepsy occur? I mean, you've got so many.
Right at the beginning.
So the infantile spasms
Yes.
is the diagnosis of epilepsy.
Yeah, so that was the start of epilepsy. Yep.
Okay, so then you knew at that point, okay, he has epilepsy, and you've been.
It's just a very rare form of epilepsy.
Sure.
That specific, and so then the infantile spasms slowly turned into focal seizures. So that's what happens: is the infantile spasms can go away, but then you have other different types of seizures. So there's all different types: focal seizures, with a certain point in your brain that's affected. Then you have general tonic-clonic seizures, which are probably what most people are familiar with, that grand mal type of seizure. You have myoclonic seizures. Those are smaller seizures. Yeah.
There's a lot of different. There's a lot of different. Well, and we'll get into it on some later conversation. The new classifications and everything that you're mentioning. But for anyone out there that may be listening to this and saying, is this epilepsy? Is this not?
Yeah.
What is not epilepsy? I mean, I understand that you're not an expert, but like from my research, I was seeing there's a very specific kind of chart, and maybe even we'll toss this up there for everyone to see, because when I was doing my research, I was confused. So anyone going through this diagnosis,
that's the hard part
of okay, here's this, here's that. Well, it could be this, if not that. And there's so many pieces that I feel like there's a whole rabbit trail that you have to look back upon to get the diagnosis. And even the doctors are following that same path. Let's start in a simple term. If you have a seizure, does that mean that you have epilepsy?
Technically, yes. I think you do. Now, that doesn't mean, so you might have a febrile seizure, right? If you have a fever, that might mean you never have a seizure again in your whole life, right? But I think technically
you're in that realm.
Yeah, that you're in that realm, right?
Because it's a spectrum disorder, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're going to have all. That's why I'm about to say, if you think your child is having a seizure, honestly, the best thing to do is to go get an EEG done. And if I were, especially after my experience, most likely your child's not going to have, it's not seizures and they're fine, all that. But if you really are concerned, you video it, you video whatever they're doing that's concerning you. If you see it more than once, I would definitely video it. You show your pediatrician, and then you make an appointment with your neurologist, and get an EEG.
Okay.
And then that's going to give you facts. Like, that's why I said the EEG is the only way you can really see if you have a seizure. And the only problem is that unless they catch the episode on the EEG, they won't know. But they can at least see what your brain's doing. Is there a lot of, so Charlie's brain, I have a picture I could show you, but looks like this. Crazy.
Maybe we'll toss it up if we.
I can send it. But so they would even know without seeing a technical seizure, they're going to say he has an abnormal EEG. So he is prone to seizures. So they can see that from even if they don't have the seizure on the EEG.
And the one thing that surprised me, I think most of all in the research, was, at least from what I saw, 1 out of 26 people get diagnosed with epilepsy in their life.
Yes, and the Epilepsy Foundation, it's like Epilepsy Awareness Month, and they just posted that. I think it's now. I'm pretty sure it's March. Yes.
March. Wow. Yeah. Here we are.
Yeah.
But that number was so striking to me. 1 out of 26. That's one person in every classroom, essentially, in your, when you're in grade school or whatever. That's a lot of people. But I think the positive side that I saw, and I wanted to mention as well, is 6 out of 10 people will be diagnosed seizure-free at some point as well.
Yes. So especially when you don't have that genetic mutation.
Right. So it's the potential of you may be diagnosed, but there's a hope that you hold on to.
Yes.
With Charlie's specific genetic mutation, how hard is it to hold on to that hope?
Really hard. And like I said, I'm the ultimate optimist. So, um, yeah, so we've tried over 30 different medications. So he has what's called medication resistant. Um, and there's even a better term that encephaloph, I can't say it. Another better term for it. But yeah. So Charlie, so continuing the story back there. So there was a few medications he tried in that time frame. One of them making him so sleepy he like couldn't even move. And then we went to Minnesota for the Mayo Clinic, and we just tried multiple different medications. And then we were getting to the point where he was having so many drop seizures. So drop seizures is another type of seizure. So where your body essentially drops. And so it can be pretty severe where you can get hurt, right? So your whole
Yeah,
body like
depending on
drops
where you're
down.
at, I mean, everything.
Yes. So we were having like 20 to 30 of those a day. So at this point, we were looking at surgical options because we had tried so many different seizures. So 20 to 30. So Boston, one of the doctors in Boston kind of said, hey, what about, it's called a corpus callosum surgery. Do you know what your corpus callosum is?
No. I don't.
It's the nerve that runs through the middle of your brain that connects the two sides.
Wow.
So what they do is they cut, and some people are born without it, and they're totally fine. Horses don't have them. Pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong. I think that was the fact. But anyways, so you can cut it and you can be totally fine. So what they do is in the surgery, they cut the corpus callosum so that the two sides of the brain stop talking, so that the seizures hopefully stay on one side of the brain. So your brain will continue to work because it'll find little pathways to continue to work together, but hopefully this will decrease the seizures. So this surgery was in 2000. So this is a major brain surgery.
Right.
But we were for us, everything has been let's try, right? So Charlie, like I said, he's nonverbal at the moment. He's not ambulatory. He's working on standing on his own. He's working on walking. He's doing really well, but limited, right? So limited cognitive ability that we know of. He's working with what's called an eye gaze device right now. At this point, he wasn't. So we are very much on let's try because hopefully it can only improve
whatever you
things.
can do.
Yes, because
to gain
his
hope.
level is his quality of life. Is the goal. So we did do that surgery. So they cut. And we went about 9 days without any seizures. And that was probably the longest we've ever been without a seizure. And that was very exciting for those 9 days. But then they started to come back.
So he had brain surgery.
Yeah.
From my research on your Instagram. I believe it's somewhere around July 2023.
Yep. I was literally just going through it in my head. I was like, it wasn't.
So he's.
Yeah. So about a year and a half.
Less than 2 years old still?
So 23. So he's about to be 3.
About to be 3.
Yeah. So he's born
and
2020.
it has brain surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you deal with that mentally? Did you just so heavily focus on getting him better that it just you didn't think my 2-year-old's about to have brain surgery, or how did you handle that?
I don't know. Like I was going to say earlier, so I think with this journey, for my personality at least, is a level of like numbness to the fact that these are huge deals. Like now that like saying it out loud, it's like, oh, that's kind of a big deal that he's having brain surgery. Like, oh yeah, hey. Yeah, I mean, you could go to despair. 100%. And I don't think anyone would blame me if I was like cowering in the corner in despair and depressed and all the things. And I don't blame anyone else if that's how it's what's happened to them, because it is a lot. But I think you kind of learn to compartmentalize and to, like I said, kind of like numb to the fact that this is a lot because it becomes your normal. It becomes like you have to continue going. There's no other option, right? There's no other option. We're going to keep trying our best for Charlie, and it's going to look like this. And our family looks so different than I expected it to. And I think the person I feel the worst for, that's like the hardest for me, is my older son, is Jack, is Charlie's sibling. Because Charlie, obviously for him that he has to suffer through this, but there's a level that he doesn't understand cognitively because he's not able to. But then Jack, our older son, to watch his brother go through this is really, terrible. I feel like growing up, I didn't have any trauma or anything that was very hard. I grew up in a really safe, really beautiful environment. Similar, right? We grew up in
Yeah,
the same one.
absolutely.
And so to have this, like for him to have to watch his brother have multiple seizures a day, for me to have to pull over the car and stop because Charlie's having a seizure, can he breathe? Are we going to the hospital? All of this, like that's his constant. One day this was before the surgery and it was Christmas Eve and we had to pull over on our way to church for Christmas Eve. We had to pull over at the fire station and we were like, do we need to go to the hospital? And like about to give emergency meds because Charlie, the seizure wouldn't stop. And that's what Jack had to be dropped off with his grandparents because we had to go down to the hospital. So that takes a toll. Okay, so the corpus callosum surgery that Charlie had, they also did another surgery at the same time for his G-tube. So a G-tube is a tube that's in a child's or in a person's stomach, and it goes right in. It really isn't too crazy painful or anything. You could literally take it out and the hole will close up within, I heard 30 minutes, which seems very fast, but it'll close up pretty fast. So we did that because with the keto diet, and I told you I was measuring all the food and all these things. So he was drinking all his milk himself out of his cup because he can't drink out of his cup. But all of a sudden he stopped. He stopped drinking his milk, and then getting him to eat those meals, which was taking forever from, to do all of this, getting him to eat those meals was becoming like a 30-minute process of shoving food down his throat, which was not good for anyone. So when we talked to the GI doctor, he was like, okay, so you can do a G-tube. And Eleanor, who I mentioned before, her son had one. So that was really helpful because I got to talk to her about it. I was very scared because that felt very permanent. It felt very different. Like I've had a hard time becoming different. Like when Charlie was still in the stroller, that was okay because he still looked like a little kid. No one really thought much. And he but then when he now has moved to a wheelchair, which is better for him, it feels very different. And it's sometimes hard for me. I don't like to feel that different.
Well, and I think it goes to the part of you that is, you don't seem like a person that seeks sympathy.
No.
Right.
No, I don't want pity. And I even say that. I'm like, I want to tell this story to help people not to get pity. That's not my goal, right? I don't want anyone to feel bad. I love prayers because everyone can use prayers. So, but I don't want anyone to pity us. I just want to hopefully maybe inspire people to work really hard, to do their best with the gifts they've been given because they have the opportunity. I just spoke to the 8th graders at the school I teach at, and about doing their best because they can. That's what I want to inspire and hopefully help if you're going through something, but not pity. No.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to be confused about that, about your intentions today. You just mentioned a little bit about faith. Tell me about your faith journey during this time. I understand you're a very religious person. You're very connected to your faith. How during all of this hardship, during all of this seemingly just situation that shouldn't happen, it shouldn't exist.
Yeah, right.
How do you handle that on a faith basis?
Really quick before I go to faith, I just want to say about the G-tube that it was a gift. So it was something that I was really hesitant on, but I feel like now it was such a gift because we're working on so many things, PT, OT, all these things, but that's one thing we don't have to worry about anymore. And we can make sure he gets the nutrition, and we've actually stayed out of the hospital because of that. So that's been huge. So I will say if that's something that your child needs, definitely consider because it's going to be a lot better than you think it is. At least it was for us. But faith, I feel like faith is such a loaded question. It's a loaded answer. it's been a process, a loaded process for me, and I'm still in it, right? So I grew up very strong faith. Um, the school I was at, really strong, super Catholic, and really loved my faith. Really didn't have much. My mom had breast cancer when I was in high school, but she just took it as a blip and it wasn't even on our rate. I mean, it was so little, like really for her. But just really did all the things. So I was the leader of everything. I went to church all the time. And there's two big moments in my faith that still hold me to get, like, I think I look back on. One of them was praying, and Jesus just overwhelmingly gave me this gift of knowledge of how much he loves me. Just so much overwhelming knowledge of how much he loves me. And I remember being like, what do I do with that? And he just said, love me. That was it. And so I explored that, and then realized that I can really truly love him by having a family, and that was what he was asking of me. And then little did I know. And then another moment that I love to share with my students especially, but I remember praying and being like, God, why do you love me? And this was in college. And I start listing all these things, like how great, these things I'm doing that are good. And I remember him very clearly stopping me and saying, no, I love you because you are Lisa De Palma. That's it. There's nothing you can do more to make me love you. Like, I just love you because you are you. And that moment is so huge. Like, holding on to that moment and seeing that for Charlie, right? There's nothing that Charlie needs to do to gain God's love. Like, God loves him so much. And I know that's that. And then you go to that. So God loves Charlie so much, and I know this very clearly in my heart. Then how could he let him suffer? Right? How can he let him suffer so much? And that is something I don't think I'll ever understand this side of earth, right? This side of heaven, they say. But I do know, because of Jesus on the cross, that suffering has purpose. And we were just in the hospital this past week. And I remember feeling like Jesus in Gethsemane, where you're like, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's praying there and he's like sweating blood and like, God, if you can take this from me, take it. But if not, then your will be done, right? And that's how I was just like, and it wasn't for me, from me, yes, but from Charlie, like, God. And I just know that God is here. That's what I've come to. So I feel like my faith is like all these depth, like all these deep things, all this like, oh, a reason for that. No, nope. Very simple. I know God is here. I know God is with us. And I know God does not want this for Charlie. That because of free will in the world, and because of that permissive will that God has, right? That this happened because there's sin, right? So not good things happen because of sin. But God didn't want this for him because God is love, right? So I think that has given me some peace to know that I know that God is love and he did not want this, but this happened, right? Because of sin, and that we had no control. I think that's the other thing I've been learning. I have no control. I have no control. So my prayer now is not
humans
for
make
control.
Plans and God
Yes.
laughs. Right?
It's like, we all think we have so much control. Oh, my child is going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's like, I used to be like that, and everyone, we all are in different ways.
As a father of a 3-month-old right now, I can tell you, it's, I already am like, we were planning on this.
Yeah.
And that is not working out. And we're 3 months into it.
Yes.
So I can't imagine.
That level, that giving up that control, and that the new prayer that I have is not for the seizures, even though that's my biggest thing. I would love for the seizures to stop. But my prayer is peace. My prayer has become simply peace. Peace in all of it, in everything. Because guess what Charlie shows to us? Charlie shows peace. He shows peace and joy. He gets upset sometimes, of course, like any person or child. Yeah. But really, overall, all he lives is peace and joy.
Wow.
through everything. So it's like, if he can do that, then I can do that, then that's what God is asking of us. And I know God is here. I don't know why. I just know he's right here. He's holding my hand. I don't know what to say in prayer most of the time, but I just know he's here. And it's become very simple. I think that aspect.
That's beautiful. So help me understand what is VNS?
So VNS is a vagus nerve stimulator. So essentially they did a surgery where they cut right here. So you'll see on Charlie, he has a scar and they wrap, that's where your vagus nerve is, whichever side it is. And they wrap electrical, like a wire around his vagus nerve. And then they have essentially a port, kind of like with cancer, but for him, like a port that connects to the wire and that shocks the nerve. So it shocks the nerve to try and avoid the seizures. So it's constantly shocking throughout the day. And they start with like lower and then go up. So I think he's at every few minutes that it's shocking the nerve automatically to try and eliminate those seizures. And then so for us, when we see a seizure clinically, so subclinically is just you can't see them, clinically is when you see them, we have a magnet. And so we'll swipe the magnet over the port part, and that will shock right then to try and get rid of that seizure, to make the brain's waves change, so then the seizure will stop. I would say in the beginning it was very effective. We had a little honeymoon period of no seizures for about a few days, and then still now a lot of the times it works. Those short seizures, like when we swipe it, it'll really stop them. But we're at a place right now where we're having a hard time with seizures. So yeah, but I really recommend the VNS because it seems to really help, as well as it's a very minimal surgery. And you can turn it off if it doesn't work, but then you can always turn it back on. And it has a lot of adjustments you can do. And also as a parent, this is very minor, but you feel like you can actually do something. So when someone's having a seizure, you have like no control, and you can't do much. But then with the VNS, you feel like you can, because you can swipe the magnet. It feels like you can do a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I don't think that
nice.
is minor
Yeah.
at all. I
It's
think that
nice
is
to feel like
that's
you
a
can
very
do
big
that.
piece, to feel like you have something you can do to help your child that's suffering.
Yes.
So that makes sense to me.
Exactly. So that's been really helpful for us.
For anyone else out there that's going through the same thing, they have a child that has epilepsy and is having, several seizures a day, or even just one.
Yeah, even one.
How do
terrible.
you explain that to a sibling? What did you do, and what would you recommend doing, and or explaining, or how do you even go through that process?
I know. That's a great question. Magic Treehouse has a very good brain episode. And before even that, but I remember that was one of them. Essentially, I told Jack very scientifically, right? So Charlie's brain is different than ours. It was formed differently. And it doesn't, like the nerves, the messages don't get sent correctly. So Magic Treehouse does have a very good brain thing where you see them, they go into the brain and they show all the synapses, and they have the lights going from each part. And so I was like, Jack, this is it. Your brain's working like this, but Charlie's, the lights, the messages don't go where they need to go. So that's why he's having seizures. It was very clear, very, 5, they don't even think that far into it. Like, I feel so bad, but I don't even think he realizes it's he's had his brother since Jack's only 19 months older than Charlie. So he's always been a part of it. And as long as Jack could understand, Charlie's had seizures. So it's been, I think, something also that's just natural for him, that he just knows kind of what to do. I hate that it has to be natural for him, but it is. And he's a great big brother to him. But he asks questions that are very hard. He just recently asked the question, will Charlie get married? And I said, I don't know if Charlie's going to get married, because, his brain works differently than us, but I know that you're going to take such good care of him, and I don't know, something else. And I said, and we're going to be here, and he's going to be with us, and something like that. And then another thing, we talked about when Charlie goes to heaven, that he'll be able to walk and talk. Um, so these are just real conversations that we have.
So
Right.
honesty is really what you're anchoring into the
Yeah.
siblings. Is they know something's wrong.
Yes.
Siblings always have that inkling. I'm
Yes.
one of 6, and I think we always had it, and I think we still do. And I can appreciate that. I've heard similar things with other different struggles before, and I think it's that honesty piece. It goes a long way, and trust,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. Let's take a kind of turn a little bit and get into just the seizures. So somebody out there, maybe a little bit further along,
Yeah.
they're after the diagnosis of epilepsy, and they may be saying, okay, seizures in general, I want to understand them. I want to look at what's happening. From my understanding, there's 3 parts to every seizure. Is that correct from your knowledge? The beginning, the middle, and the end.
Okay. Yeah.
And the beginning.
The aura.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So explain to me a little bit of that, because obviously I'm just from what I've read, but you've experienced it.
It's hard because Charlie can't speak. So some of the stuff, so you won't necessarily know, right? But yes, you have the aura where you get that feeling that a seizure is coming. I don't know what that's like. Sometimes we can kind of tell with Charlie. And then the seizure. So for Charlie, his seizure, his eyes go to the left. His body, at this point in time, he's had little differences throughout, but at this point in time, eyes goes to the left, arms clench, his lip starts shaking, and sometimes has a hard time breathing, right? So there's the seizure, and then you have the postictal phase. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
And so some kids or some people, most people are tired in that situation. Charlie actually will go through the seizure, and then at the end he'll smile. That's like when he comes out of the seizure, he does a smile. Yeah, which is like, I don't know how I feel about it, but yeah. So that's kind of how you know, is like when he does this smile, he comes back. Lately, his seizures have been lasting longer where his lip is moving, and he'll have these like little seizures after. And then they go into postictal phase, which most kids or people are tired. So like sometimes he'll just fall right asleep. Sometimes he'll come back up. If it's a short seizure, he'll just come back too, and then he'll be fine. So it kind of depends on the length of the seizure.
Being non-communicative, how have you and Ty, your husband, dealt with that along the way? How do you communicate with Charlie and say, we're here?
Yeah, physical touch. So that's definitely, I would say, his love language. He like the hugging. So he loves hugs. He just wants to be hugged and held all the time. Now that he's 43 pounds, it's a little bit harder, but yeah, I think with him is a lot of physical touch, and even with Jack, going over and giving him hugs and talking to him like normal, looking him in the eyes, right? He looks you in the eye, and treating him, any person with disabilities, treating them just like you would anyone else. And I think that key of talking to them, like engaging with them. And even so, Charlie does respond. So you will feel like he's engaging with you back because he's looking you in the eye. Sometimes, most of the time, but sometimes he's not. So I think like encouraging to give that physical touch, those hugs, and that looking in the eye for Charlie, and then for all kids.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
All kids
absolutely.
with disabilities to encourage people to feel more comfortable.
Some organizations that have helped you guys along the way. I've from your Instagram again, I've seen Trexo and some other ones that have helped them, feel the sensation of walking. Is there any that you want to specifically just let people know about today, that if they're going through what you guys are going through right now, that they can reach out to them, they can, show some support or anything like that?
Yeah. So the big one for us specifically was just founded like not even a year ago, Curagaba A. And so that was founded just for kids with rare disease. So, right, there's a whole rare disease community, which are people who have rare diseases like Charlie, who's the only one in the world, but they're So Cure GABA A brings together all those, right? I said his mutation affects the GABA receptor. So that's why it's called GABA A. So there are 12 different mutations that affect that. So you've got GABA 1, GABA 2, GABA 3, GABA 4, and then GABA with a B in there, those. So a woman, Monica, in California, started this organization for her daughter because her daughter has a GABA 1 mutation. And they have just done really phenomenal things really fast. So we were at a conference with them in December and met with other families that have children with similar mutations, all different ranges of abilities and all different ages. And it was really powerful to be able to meet with other people. I remember when I was thinking I was going to go there and be exhausted because it was very like emotional, but I actually went there and I feel like had the closest connection with people very fast, which I don't typically have right away. So the level of connection and understanding was really amazing. So I definitely would encourage people, if they have a GABA receptor, so like similar, reach out to Cure GABA A, reach out to us. There's a website. We're really working to raise money because they're actually really working on gene therapy, which would be like incredible. If you don't know what
let's
gene
take
therapy
this
is.
opportunity
Yeah.
to just open that up and say, where can they go? We'll make sure the link is there and put it out there. Where can they go
Yes.
to donate? Do you know specifically?
CureGABAA.org, and then there's a donate link. You can see all the kids that have in their stories, like Charlie. You can see what they're exactly doing. I'm going to post on my account too. So at charlies.story.
And that's IE, correct?
IE, yeah. And no apostrophe. And then go on there. You can see the story. You can see what it gives a better description of the type of epilepsies, the type of abilities, all the things. But they're working on a gene therapy, which would, if there's a baby born with a GABA2 mutation, would actually cure them, right? So a gene therapy would get rid of the gene that's mutated and replace it with the correct one.
Wow.
So that's what they're working on.
Do you have any idea of the timeline or
timeline? They literally they're working on it. It all depends on money. So if they get enough money now, it could be in a year. It could be in 2 years.
Wow.
So it really, we met at the conference, we met with the people working on the gene therapy, and it's really all about the money.
Wow. Well, you guys heard it, so go ahead and do your thing. Tell me about how, in the very beginning, I guess it was at maybe the 8-month point for you guys, how did you seek community? Was there a community to go to?
At that point, I don't think I really was able to in the beginning. Social media, I have a love-hate relationship with. So, but Facebook, definitely the groups. So there were some groups, and that's how Monica and I met, because
Monica is
the founder of Cure GABA A, and we met through Facebook groups, and there's other people with similar mutations to Charlie, and that's how that all started. But in the very beginning, not much. But what did happen when in December, when we did decide to move, I joined the Special Needs Parents of Georgia Facebook group. And if anyone has a special needs child or a child with special needs, that's a great group if you're in Georgia. And I met through there Eleanor, who, she'll make me cry. I won't cry the whole time. But that has been such a gift, because her son, James, has not the same mutation, but he has epilepsy as well. Also very difficult to control, and she sees the same doctor that we do. And so when we were moving, I remember meeting her through there, and we just she went to UGA too. Funny enough, same year, but we didn't know each other. We have mutual friends, and went through all these things, and we were like, oh my gosh, me too. And we were sharing keto milk, because I came to Georgia, I didn't have the milk I needed, and so she had it, so I went and got it, and she's been a huge blessing.
What is the value? Blessing. What is the value you can put on finding somebody that is going through the same thing you're going through?
no words. Yeah, super important. I think her, and then I have another friend, Lindsay, who her son has epilepsy as well. Now they don't have any genetic mutation, and he started when he was 3, so his was when he was older, so he's already walking and talking. So that has a whole different challenges because there's uh, different challenges that come with when they can walk and talk because you've got behavioral things and more things, different.
Yeah.
So she's been an amazing resource too, and just having someone to talk to and like share, to be sad with sometimes and to be strong with. And now the whole group for Cure Gabe. So I feel like just getting out there, and like I said, I have a love-hate with social media, but the reason I still have it is for this community, is for those. There's so many, like on Instagram, there's a lot of disability, like the Rare Life, and they do podcasts, and she shares stories. There's multiple different things where they share stories of people.
I've heard podcasts can be effective.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yes. And there's just a lot. There's another person, Accessible Adventures. She's amazing. She gave me so much hope because her son has LGS, which is a type of seizures, which Charlie has. It's called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And she brings her son everywhere on these crazy, amazing adventures. They do amazing jobs showing that is still possible. So
well,
I think
we'll make sure we reach out for any pages that
people
you want to shout out. We'll make sure.
I have a lot of people.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful. And that leads me to, so tell me about the journey of deciding to start your own page and about Charlie.
My little baby
why
page.
did you decide to, but why did you decide to share Charlie's story?
It was a hard decision. It was until December when I went to that conference, I just had that. I was like, is it too much? I don't know how I felt. I don't want to like act like I am going through so much because I don't feel the ultimate optimist. So I don't prefer to show things that are hard, right? So that's hard for me to show things that are hard because I want to be positive. I want to be positive for everyone around me so that it's not too much, right? But I also want to be real. Like authenticity is virtue since 7th grade. I remember at school, and that virtue is so important. So I want to be real. So I felt like Instagram and Facebook, I was frustrated with it not feeling real. And so I didn't know how to do it. And so then at that conference, I felt like, okay, God, it's time, right? It's time for me to tell Charlie's story because even if I can just help one person, because of all those people that I was mentioning from social media, it's like they've helped me. So maybe Charlie's story can help someone else. And maybe my friends who all they need is PT or OT or speech for their kid, but they can say, hey, oh, Lisa, Charlie gets that. Oh, maybe she knows someone. And they can ask because I want to just be available. I have all this knowledge now that I wasn't planning on having, but I have it. I would love to give it, right? So I would love to share the knowledge. And so I'm hoping that people will feel that they can reach out and they can ask questions and that I can maybe help. Or if not, they know that someone's there to listen. That's my goal.
On that note, to wrap things up, somebody that has listened to this entire conversation so far, they have a child that was just diagnosed with epilepsy, infantile spasms. What would you say to them? Take your time.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I know. And I'm like, I want to say it's going to be okay, but that doesn't feel like valid enough. It doesn't feel seeing them enough, right? Like it's going to be hard, maybe is more true. It's going to be really hard. And I think what's going to be really hard, or for me, what was really hard is letting go of what you thought it was going to look like. And that's the hardest part.
But Amsterdam's beautiful.
Yes, but Amsterdam, there is beauty to it, and you're gonna go through. For me, it's like once a month. I feel like I feel sad, like little moments of really sadness, but overall, everything else is good. There's so many good things, and I also can't stress enough how to find a community of people that love you and love your family and love your child. Because coming to Georgia, that was the biggest gift. I didn't think I was going to cry, but that was the biggest gift we could have ever received. And if you look on my Instagram page, we just had Make-A-Wish build a treehouse for Charlie. And there were over 100 people there to celebrate with us. And that wasn't even all of the people that love us so much and care for us. But that community of people is what keeps me going. I'm definitely a people person. So, and also the fact for that person starting this is it's going to be so hard, but you can do it as like, just get your people, like find your people and allow them to help you. So this is the biggest quote that I heard before. And it's the quote of charity is accepting charity. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Mrs. Metz told me that.
Wow, that's a good one though.
Charity is accepting charity. And I have taken that to heart, because by allowing people to help you, you are not only allowing them to build that virtue of charity, but you are building it too, because you're accepting the charity. You're both helping each other really in the end. So I think sometimes in this day and age, it's like, oh, I'm independent. I can do it all. It's like, yeah, of course you can. Yeah, I can do it all. But why? But who are you actually helping by doing it all yourself, right? No one. By allowing people to help you and allowing people to be there for you, you're giving them a sense of purpose, of community, and you're receiving it, right? So that love, you're receiving that love. So that was one of those big things that I also have learned and kind of leaned on, is it's like, okay, I am going to allow people to help me. And everyone uses or takes that differently. So I loved that little quote.
Well, Lisa, thank you for sharing Charlie's story today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.